Hey, how are you doing, future entrepreneurs? We're going to be looking at stakeholder management. Um, Stakeholders is anybody who is interested in the business, which is different from shareholders. Shareholders is someone who owns shares in the business, whereas stakeholders is anybody who is interested. So they don't have to own shares, just need some kind of interest in the business. It might be a lot of interest, such as an owner, because they've invested money and they want profit, or it could be little interest, like the local community. You might see the shop, but not necessarily care much about it. So, stakeholders are classified into two categories. We have internal and external. So, internal stakeholders are employees, managers, and owners, and they have different needs, different interests. So, take employees for example. Employees, if you were working for someone, what would be your interest? So, I tend to think of Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, and that can help me figure out the interests. So, Maslow tells us that number one, physiological needs need to be met. So, in such manner, is pay. I want to be paid so that I can buy food, I can pay rent for my home. Then, once that's met, then the next one is safety. I want to be in a place where I feel safe, where I know that the roof is not going to collapse on me the next day. So, take into account the sweatshops in Sri Lanka where they make garments. I think it was 2004. A factory where 4,000 people, people like you and me, were working there, and the roof collapsed, killing 1,000 people, and other 2,000 were injured. And you know that's why stakeholder management is important, because there could be conflicts. I want safety if I'm an employee, but the owner might want profit, or they might want have other interests. So there could be a conflict here. We want to figure out what to do. Um, so according to Maslow, so we see physiological, which is in the case of an employee being paid, then safety, and then once we have safety, the next one is called social, and is the ability to just if you're in a place, be able to socialize, talk to other people, um, not be treated like a robot. Um, think about lines of production in the 1920s, 1910, where employees were considered to be just like operational, doing small tasks repeatedly. So they were very good at them, but that was all they were doing, and they weren't allowed to socialize. So you want to be able to socialize, talk to other people, be able to communicate. Then once you have that, the next one is esteem. So respect. You want to have respect at work. You want people to treat you well and fair. And so you are going to treat others. And then on top, at the cusp of Maslow, we have self-realization. And this is when you are working and you enjoy your work. Your interest is because work itself is rewarding. And you have constant improvement, career progression. If you're in a job, it could be a variety of interests. Maybe it's a stepping stone to do something else. Maybe it's just wage. Maybe maybe you're there because of because of social. Maybe your best friend works there. So there's a variety of interests. I recommend you use the Maslow hierarchy of needs to look at the interests of the employee. So next, we have managers and owners. The best way to look at the interests of managers and owners is to look at a diagram about total costs and total revenue. The x-axis, that's the quantity, the output of the business. The y-axis is your total cost and your total revenue. You might remember this from business objectives. You can imagine business objectives are very much linked to interests. So the one going down and up, that is your total cost. The one going up and then down is your total revenue. Total costs is just your costs, fixed variable costs. They go down and then they go up. Revenue is the quantity you sell times the price per unit. It goes up and then it goes down. The assumption is the market gets saturated, and for you to sell more, you're going to lower the price. So your revenue starts going down as you increase the quantity. the costs, they go down as you maximize the output of the machines. Then it goes up as when you start incurring these economies of scale. People are not as productive. So how does this help us figure the interest of owners and managers? Well, owners want to profit maximize, or well, that's the assumption when we look at business studies. And that's the biggest difference between total cost and total revenue, the biggest gap there. So that's Q1. And that's what owners are after. They want to have profit. You know, people that invest in shares, you know, in the stock market, they're after profit. Owners of a business, if it's private business, again, they're after profit. Whereas if you look at managers, they might be looking at growth. This here, Q3. So they're not necessarily in to see the business make a profit, but they are in the business because they want to see the business grow, because their wage might be tied to the growth of this business. It could be in terms of quantity. You can see this point here. We're making the most quantity and breaking even. We're not making a profit, but we're making the most quantity. Or it could be tied to just high revenue. So you can see this point here, total revenue is the highest point of total revenue. We call this Q2. And managers could also want that. They might want a high revenue. The difference between both is one is just quantity, selling a large number of units, whereas a high total revenue is a large amount of money going into the business from the sale of these goods. So the assumption is that the price will be higher at this point than it is later on. Now, why will there be a conflict here? Well, you know, we can't meet all these objectives because we have limited resources and limited time. So we can either focus on growth, Q3, or we can focus on profit maximizing, Q1. So what are we going to do? It depends, you know. Are you focused on what managers want? Are you focused on what the owners want? Who has power over the business? What helps us is a tool called Stakeholder Mapping. But at least you see the different interests that can be. So now let's see external stakeholders. So external stakeholders, again, they have an interest in the business. And they have, for example, suppliers. So let's list them. We have suppliers. They supply raw materials, parts. They want to be paid. They want more business. You have the government. We pay taxes to the government, so they're interested in your business, so you can pay taxes. But they're not checking your business on a day-to-day basis, maybe a couple of times a year. But they have a lot of power. Then we have customers. They buy your products, so they have a lot of interest, but it doesn't mean they have power, because they don't choose where the business is going or what products they're going to make. They have a certain level of power that is not as high as an owner, for example, but they have a lot of interest. Then we have the local community. And these are the people around the business. So if you have a factory, you might be watching out for the community. You don't want to annoy them because they might start marching with campaigning for you to move out because you're polluting too much or you're too noisy. Or maybe you have a corner shop and they don't really care about you. Or maybe you have a shop which is providing something good, or a business that is, I don't know, offering training or helping people find work. So the local community might have a lot of interest in you. Do they have a lot of power? Usually they don't, unless they gather together. So these are the external. And below we'll put internal. So we have employees, so owners, have managers, and employees. All of them with their own needs and interests. So what to do with all of them? and these are internal. Well, we can use stakeholder mapping to help us. What is it? Show you. It's a tool to help us decide what course to take, depending on how much power and influence and interest all these different stakeholders have. So the x-axis is to do with interest. And the y-axis is to do with power and influence. So we can pinpoint them. So let's look at, I don't know, owners. They have quite a lot of power and a lot of interest. So owners will be somewhere here. Then we have, I don't know, customers. Actually, no, let's use the right color. Wow, this color coded. So owners here, internal. Whereas customers, external, they have a lot of interest but little power. So customers there. We have the government. Government has a lot of power, yes, but very little interest. They only see your business a few times a year, and they just want to make sure you obey by the rules and you pay your taxes. So we have the government. Let's put one more here. We have the local community. Local community. And they might not have much interest if your business is a small corner shop. Let's put one more from here, employees. Yeah. So they have a lot of interest, but they don't have much power unless there's a union. But individually, the employees might not. So we'll put them there. So a little bit of power, but not too much in employees. All right. So we map them. So what now? Well, now what we do is we use our guidance. And the guidance tells us this. It uses quadrants. So again, this is your interest. We put an I for interest. This is P for power. And these are the solutions. So anybody that has a lot of interest and power, we manage closely. We want to make sure that they're satisfied and that we know where they want the business to go. Otherwise, they might take their money elsewhere. What about a lot of interest but no power, like customers? We keep them informed. So we tell them what the new products are. We tell them what the opening times are. If there's insurance, what other products are coming up. So we keep them informed. So customer employees as well, keep them informed. But we don't spend as much or time and resources as it will be on owners. This one in this quadrant here, we spend more of our resources. We manage closely. So what about no power, very little interest and very little power, like the local community? These ones we just monitor. So we just keep an eye on them. So this is the least amount of energy we use. We just keep an eye on them, monitor them. So what about a lot of power, but they're little interest? These ones we keep satisfied. Keep satisfied. What does it mean? Well, in case of the government, we make sure that they're satisfied. We pay our taxes and we obey by the rules so that they don't close the business down. So these are the solutions that stakeholder mapping gives us. That is stakeholder and stakeholder management. Internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. We then measure them by the level of power, by the level of influence, and then we can give solutions to what to do with them. And also we can see how there's conflicts and how we can resolve them by either, if they're employees, we can give them a share scheme so they also start being owners of the business. This is known as divorce of ownership and control. When, let's say, owners want profit, but the employees just want sort of more, I guess, an increase in wages. So to make sure that they're both on the same page, businesses nowadays are not just paying wages, but they're offering share schemes. So they give them shares to the managers, they give shares to the employees, so that the managers and employees also benefit from profits. So they would want the business to be profitable, and they're not just going to want, growth or in terms of quantity or revenue, but they're also going to want profit maximization. So suddenly you have this reconciliation between owners and managers, and that's a way to solve that problem. Excellent. I'll see you next time.